Good morning. If you would all join me for our call today, it's number 576 in your hymnal, or you can look at it on the screen behind me. We're going to sing it through twice. If you'd stand, please. Welcome to everybody that's here in person and to those of you joining us online this morning. I'm going to try to slow things down a little bit. Bobby told me that on Music Sunday I sped through everything really, really fast. I've shared with you guys, shared with you guys before that I don't mind ever coming up here and singing, but this is a little stressful to me. And to add to it today, my college president is here, so the boss is here watching. So that makes it a little more stressful. And he's also a great speaker, and you guys will hear that a little bit later. So adds a little bit of pressure to the whole thing. So welcome today. It's a beautiful day outside, and we're glad that you could be here with us. A lot of remembrances yesterday for September 11th. It's a very, very tragic day in our nation's history, and a lot of tough things to watch on television, but certainly something that we don't want to ever forget. And September 12th in 2001 is a day that I wish that we could go back to, a day that our nation came together, and something that we do not see right now, and a lot of division in our country. I would really like to see it go back to the way it was on September 12th. With all the tragedy that we had just been through, our nation really came together like it never had been together before. So let's all hope and pray that we can go back to that feeling. I hate to ask you to stand again, but please stand again and join me for our hymns of worship today. They're in your hymnal, but you can also see them on the screen behind me. We'll start out with hymn number 342, Rock of Ages.
He has
think I may have skipped the announcements before. So this week, we normally serve at the open door, but we will not be preparing food and serving this month. If you have any questions, you can see David Spell. Of course, this Thursday, September 16th, is the Quaker Men's Golf Tournament in High Point at Oak Hollow Golf Course. It's a 1 p.m. shotgun start. Is there anything else we need to talk about that? Is David, Quaker Men, any other announcements about that need to be made? Okay. The USFW will begin meeting in person on Monday, September 20th at 10 a.m. in the Aldrich Room. If there's any women that would like to join that, please come. The Archdale Friends Bazaar and Craft Fair will be on September 25th. If you would like to help with that, please see Becky. And the Bush Hill Hometown Jamboree is going to be on October 9th. They have a lot of things they're planning for that, and they need some volunteers. You see Tanya or Diane if you would like to participate in that. Is there any other announcements that we need to make today? Anybody? Okay, do we have any prayers? Anybody that needs prayers? You can look on the back of your bulletin, and then of course in the email that Linda sends out on Friday. Is there any additions to that may have happened that we don't know about? Any prayers or concerns?
Praise.
Okay, praise.
Yeah, Rick is walking a little bit with the trekking poles. So.
Great news for Rick. Any other praises, prayers, or concerns? Alan Sparks on the MS bike ride this weekend in honor of his brother. And I know that his brother is in hospice, and he and his brother did that ride together just a few years ago. So let's remember Alan. He's having a tough time right now. Anything else? Okay, Larry Dunn. Okay, the family of Larry Dunn. Anyone else? Okay, David has told me he would pray today.
Let's bow our heads, please. Dear precious Heavenly Father, just thank you for this beautiful, beautiful morning you given us, and thank you for the ability to come and worship in your house. We ask that place your guardian angels, your protective angels, your healing angels around those mentioned and those that haven't been mentioned, that so much needs your touch today. Help us be a church that goes outside these walls as we go forward and bring your message to everyone. Be with us as we go through this day of service to you. The songs we sing, the words we hear, put them on our hearts and minds, and let us be as ambassadors of this world. We ask these things in your name.
Beautiful. We are now going to dismiss for Children's Church. Shanda will be taking you guys. Come out this way. That's very, very sweet, Emerson. Fred, did you want to go to Children's Church today? Dr. Robert Shackleford has been the president of Randolph Community College since 2007. I could read you down his whole list of degrees, but one of the things I wanted to tell you about was when I went for my job interview. He talked to me and asked me the regular questions that you talk about in a job interview. And when I left there that day, I thought, I may not get that job, but I really want to work at that college because he just really made it where you knew he cared about the students at RCC. And it wasn't just about a job to him. It was about really loving what he did. And he had been there a while. I didn't go to work there until 2010. And I thought, I don't care if I don't get that job. I mean, I wanted that one, but if there was something else I could do later at the college and I didn't get that job, that would be cool too. I just wanted to go there because he said every day when he drives up to the college, he's excited about going to RCC, going to work there. And I've been there, just like I said, for 11 years now, and that hasn't changed with him. From time to time, will get a note from him or something, can you help this student? Can you help this student? We need to help this student. And in all that time he's been there since 2007, it hasn't changed. He still puts students first and still wants to help every student. Sometimes it's hard to help every student, but he still does what he can do to help our students and always thinks about them first. And that's not always easy. I know we're not a huge university, but we have a lot of students, and that's always his priority. And while he has a whole list of degrees, I think that to me is the most impressive things. He does have a PhD from UNCG. He also has a Master's of Divinity and another master's degree from UNCG. He was a member of the U.S. Army Reserves from 1985 to 1995. He served as a battalion chaplain and assistant division chaplain. He served as a chaplain in the North Carolina Air National Guard from 1992 until his retirement in January of 2008. From 1997 until his retirement, he was a wing chaplain, a senior supervisory chaplain for the 145th Airlift Wing. He was Citizen of the Year from the Asheboro-Randolph Chamber of Commerce in 2011. In 2013, he was named as President of the Year by the North Carolina State Board of Community Colleges. And in 2019, he received the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Archdale Trinity Chamber of Commerce. He speaks all over the place. During normal non-COVID times, you'll hear him anywhere in the county speaking, especially on leadership. And I've been benefited twice from his Presidential Leadership Academy, the first part and the second part of it. And it's been, when I go and talk about the college, I talk about twice it's changed my life, once as a student and once when I went through that Leadership Academy. He's a big deal. He's a big man on campus, not just because he has height, but because of what he does around our campus and around our community. Dr. Shackleford and his wife Teresa live in Randleman with their son Will, and he also has two grown children, Christy and Corey is here today, and Will and Teresa, and they're right back there, and one granddaughter, Brianna. Teresa Shackleford, his wife, is the CEO for Mercy Clinic in Randleman. So, Dr. Shackleford.
Well, I'm so glad to be with you this morning, and I appreciate that very gracious introduction. One of the things that that Lori didn't tell you was that after I did hire her after that interview, and she kept that job for several years, and then I talked to her about another job, and it was a promotion and a job that I needed her for. And before she could even moved into the office that week, we created another job, and I said, well, the right person for that is Lori. Well, you just gave her this job. Well, she can move into that office instead of this office. So she got 2 jobs in 1 week at RCC. So you've got quite a talented church member here. And I'm really honored to be here, and especially in a celebration or remembrance of 9/11. I do have my wife Teresa here. Raise your hand so they can see you. And my son Will, who lives with us, he's a senior at Providence Grove. My son Corey, and his girlfriend Anna, and her daughter Mia. And I'm very glad to have them here this morning. I'm also glad, of course, Lori and Bobby have known them for many years and have the utmost respect for Lori and what a wonderful asset she is, not only to our college, but to this community. And you're very fortunate to have her serving here in this community. And Fred and Diane Meredith, Fred was on the interview committee, was on the board of trustees when I was hired at RCC, and I have felt a close bond with him ever since that first time I met him at that interview. And Fred, like one thing we have in common is we both married up. So I just want you to know, Diane's a wonderful lady, and Diane, so good to see you. And my dear friend, Senator Tillman, we've been through many budget battles together over the years, and I'm happy to say that we were on the same side of the battle. He's always supported the community college, was a member of our board of trustees for 29 years and 7 months, and was the chair of the board the last 10 years before he ran for the state senate. And he ended up being in the Senate long enough and becoming influential enough and having enough seniority that your plate numbers is like in the military. I can look at somebody's military plate and I can tell you what rank he is, because the lower the number, the higher the rank. Well, Senator Tillman got way down in the single digits, and he was a high-ranking senator and was a very good friend to us. And so it's great to be with each of you here this morning. Now, Lori told me that I had 15 to 20 minutes. So those of you who know me, pray for me. Because this is a lot I want to share with you this morning, but I'm going to go through it kind of quickly. By the way, I'm speaking to the, I meant to look up the date, but the Quaker men, I don't know how it's organized, but the regional meeting Quaker men's thing this fall, David Milliken has asked me to speak also on 9/11 at that, so I'll be able to share more at that time. But let me tell you a little bit. You all know the basic story. Let me start with the basic story, and then I want to tell you about my experience. I was a military chaplain for 22 and a half years, and it was one of the most meaningful experiences of my life. I remember sitting in classes and seminars out in Riverside, California, years ago, studying something called CISM, Critical Incident Stress Management. It's a particular kind of counseling that you use in very critical incidents like bombings and school shootings and things like that. And if I had time, I would explain what the difference is in it and regular counseling, but it's a specialized kind of counseling you use in those critical situations. And I remember sitting there for a couple weeks at Riverside in training, and then going back the next year for a couple more weeks to learn this particular critical incident stress management counseling technique. And I remember sitting there thinking, I hope and pray to God that I never have to use this. I hope this is just a trip to California, but I never have to use it. Well, it ended up, before my career was over, I had to use it as a chaplain for 2 plane crashes that I spent several weeks following up with survivors and victims' families, and I also had to use it after 9/11. On 9/11, you remember that 4 planes, 3 took off from New York, 1 took off from Washington, and the first plane at around 8:30 in the morning hit the North Tower of the Twin Towers in New York. About a half hour later, 20 minutes later, a second plane hit the South Tower, and then another plane hit the Pentagon, and then another plane. By this time, the people on board knew this isn't just a hijacking and you're not going to be landing. You're going to be flown into a building. And so they overtook the hijackers and wrestled the control of the plane away, and the plane crashed in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, and killed all of them. So those 4 planes were hijacked all at the same time, basically, on that beautiful morning. And with 3 crashes into prominent structures and 1 crash, struggling for control of the plane with the hijackers, crashed in a field in Pennsylvania. I want to talk to you about the one I got involved in right after the American Airlines Flight 77 hit the Pentagon. I was called by our general and said that I was needed in Washington because I'd been through this critical incident stress management training and was familiar with was experienced in the kind of counseling that was needed at that time. Those 4 hijackings committed by 19 hijackers, 18 from Saudi Arabia. Those 4 hijackings resulted in 2,977 deaths, over 50,000 injuries, and cost over $10 billion in structural damage. Something you may not realize is that the number of deaths from the first responders from the asbestos and the toxic chemicals over the next few years actually exceeded the number of people who died in the crashes. Over 3,000 died in the diseases brought on by the crashes, while 2,977 died in the crashes. Flight 77 took off from Dulles Airport in Washington at 8:20 in the morning. It flew out about 35 minutes. It's supposed to be going to Los Angeles. About the time it got to the Ohio-Kentucky border, it turned off the transponder so it could not be traced. They made a U-turn and headed back to Washington. Ironically, of the 5 hijackers on board, 3, when they went through security, caused the alarm to go off. 3 of the 5. And they took them over to the side and waved the wand over them and said, "You're okay, go on through." One of them, even on the video, had a box cutter sticking out of his back pocket. and was waved through after the alarm went off. The rules were different then. You could have a knife or a box cutter with the blade up that didn't exceed 4 inches. But it's amazing that our security system has changed so much that at that time, 3 of the 5 hijackers on that plane were caught by the alarm system. But all they did at that time, they thought, well, if anybody's going to do anything to a plane, it's a bomb. So they just held the luggage over to the side till they got on board. And they said, well, if it was a bomb, they wouldn't have got on board, because the only way they're going to do anything with a plane is with a bomb. And if it's a bomb, they wouldn't get on there and commit suicide. That was the thinking at that time. They didn't even check them. They let them be seated. They put their bags on board, and off they went at 8:20. About 35 minutes later, it turned around and came back. Each of these 4 hijackings had one hijacker on board who had received flight training to learn how to take control of a major airliner. And this was probably the least trained of the 4. And as he came back toward Washington, he was headed straight toward Washington. They finally picked him up on the radar about 5 minutes out, too late to scramble any jets to get him. And he was coming in, and he was struggling. He was too high, and he had to take a dive and a turn. And he finally, when he got lined up with the Pentagon, he hit full throttle. In fact, they were going 530 miles an hour, which is just about the point where a plane will start to break up in the air. And the plane was rattling, and he was doing this, trying to get right. The Pentagon has 5 sides, it has 5 layers, and it has 5 floors, thus the term Pentagon. He was aiming for the Pentagon, and as he came in, and he was a nervous wreck because he barely had control of the plane, and he didn't want to crash before he hit the Pentagon. And when he came in very low and pulled up and tried to hit the Pentagon. His wings actually clipped 5 telephone poles, and his right wing, right before they went into the building, hit a portable generator, and he actually hit a helicopter pad sitting right beside the building and bounced into the first floor. The 5 floors, most of the deaths were on the first floor, many were on the second, and a couple on the third. The impact happened so fast, you just can't imagine. 530 miles an hour, a plane entering into a solid brick building. The front of the plane was immediately demolished. It incinerated, it vaporized. The back of the plane kept pushing through, and actually the tail of the plane is all that remained, and the tail of the plane went 310 feet into the building, went to the third of the 5 layers. 10 feet longer than a football field, the tail of the plane went that far in. Everyone on the plane was killed, 64 of them. Others were killed in the Pentagon, 189 died altogether. You say, well, that's nothing compared to what happened at the World Trade Center. Well, let me give you another perspective. Do you remember how appalled and amazed we were at the Oklahoma City bombing and how tragic that was and blew off the whole side of that building and killed all those people? More people died at the Pentagon crash than died in the Oklahoma City bombing. So I was called as a chaplain to go there, and I spent a lot of time with the victims and survivors, and using this critical incident stress management counseling. And I would meet with a group of people in a boardroom, maybe 15, 18 people, and spend time with them, going through, explaining to them that you're not having unusual reactions. You're having usual reactions to an unusual event. And I follow the protocols for this kind of counseling. It's a very specialized kind of counseling because you can't go into the CIA. I had people from the CIA and the DIA, which is the defense version of the CIA, and the Pentagon, and these people are made of steel. And if I'd have gone there as a chaplain and said, I'm a chaplain and I'm here to help you work through your feelings, they'd have said, chaplain, we don't need you, we got a job to do, you can just go on back out the door. So you've got to work with them differently. And I went through that process with them in small groups. And then I would have an hour after the group, and 2 or 3 out of every group would come up and say, can I meet with you privately? And I would spend the next hour meeting with 2 or 3 of them privately, and then I'd go back into another group and start over with another group, and then meet with some privately, and then go to another group. This went on day and night for weeks. If you'd have stopped me and asked me what time of day is it, this was so intense, I couldn't have told you if it was 9:30 in the morning or 6:30 in the evening. I was just completely in this process with these people. Some of the kind of things that I heard, one man who wanted to meet with me privately said, I was standing in my boss's office, and he was sitting behind his desk, and I'm standing on this side of the desk, and I'm talking with him, and we're trying to decide how to do something this afternoon, and he wanted to do it one way, and I wanted to do it the other, and we got into a little bit of an argument about it. And right at that moment, he said, a bright light and a loud noise and a shock wave. He said, I stood back, and I'm standing there looking, and he said, in half a second, everything in front of me, the whole office, the walls, the ceiling, the desk, my boss, everything was gone. He said, I'm standing here looking outside. He's gone. The tip of the wing came through and took out that whole side of the building and came right between him and his boss, and he is standing there, and his boss just got swept away by the wing of the plane. And he said, I can't bear the guilt that I respected him, and he gave me so many chances, and he was such a caring boss, and I was arguing with him about a procedure that didn't matter much at all. And I wish I could go back and tell him how much I respected him and what a great boss he was, instead of my last moment standing there arguing with him as he swept away before my eyes. It was those kind of stories that I dealt with for weeks and weeks. Another group of people told me in one of the group meetings, I met with a group who had been together. There were about 12 of them, and the building had collapsed, and they didn't even know where they were. The ceilings were down to about this low. Water was on the floor coming in from water lines. Electric wires in there were sparking, and they were on their knees crawling, hoping that they wouldn't get electrocuted, crawling in the water and trying to figure out where to go. And he said the group of them got down to the end of a hallway. They had no idea where they were. And they said, well, we've got a choice to make. Do we go to the right or do we go to the left? They finally decided, well, so somebody has a chance in our group. You folks go that way, and we'll go this way. The group that went that way was never seen alive again. These people that I was counseling with had such survivor guilt, we told them to go that way. And they said, I had no idea. One of them said, I remember my father telling me that my life was made up of the decisions I made. But I never took that seriously until that day. And if I'd gone that way, I would be dead. And I went this way, and I'm alive. And I feel bad that we sent them that way. But never again will I take a decision lightly in my life, because I realize that decisions are life and death. And what my life is will be the result of the decisions I make. And I realized how lucky I am to be alive because of the careless decisions I've made all my life. And he sat there and wept for the group that got lost. I had people who were concerned about their children. We couldn't meet in a boardroom. We had to meet in a huge auditorium, and there were about 400 people in there who came to a special session for parents who were concerned about their children. They were really panicked because when the attack happened, they shut down everything immediately, and you couldn't go out in the parking lot and get in your car and run to the school and pick up your children. And so many people who worked in there had children in schools all around the area, and by then they had heard about the other attacks, and they thought the whole country was under attack, and war was starting, and my child is in school a mile from here, and I can't go get her. And they said they'd never had such a helpless feeling in their lives, and they were panicking. Some of them couldn't breathe. Some passed out because they hyperventilated. I've got to go get my baby. And when it was all over, they came and said, Chaplain, could you talk to us about how to talk to our children about this? I met in a group, about 400 people, talked about the children. Among the many things I told them, just some of the primary things I said, well, you talking to your children is not going to mean nearly as much to them as how you act around your children. They're going to reflect your emotions. If you are full of fear and you're afraid to go back out in public and you're afraid of Washington and you're afraid of life, your children are going to reflect that. Whatever you respond to, however you respond, that's going to be their response. But one thing, keep up the normal routines. Don't let them stay up all night because, well, this is a different time. Don't let them eat just junk all the time because, well, this is a stressful time. It will help them to get back into normal routines. So I talked to them about that. One other story I'll tell you briefly is a woman who came to me after attending a funeral of one of her coworkers. She worked at the front desk as a receptionist. And people come in every morning, just go by, many of them not speak, not look. She was a receptionist. And she said there was this one man, John, who came in every morning and stopped at her desk and smiled and leaned over and said, how are you doing this morning? Well, I'm doing fine. How are you? He said, well, I hope you have a wonderful day. If there's anything I can do for you, please let me know. He was a janitor. He's the only one every morning that took time to speak to her as a person and ask how she was doing. When he died, some of them went to his funeral. And when she got there, she met some of his family. And she met his children and his grandchildren. And you would have thought that he was the highest ranked person that died in the crash, even though there was a lieutenant general that died in the Pentagon, and there was a retired rear admiral on the plane. These grandchildren weren't thinking about them. They said to her, the receptionist, did you know that my pawpaw worked at the Pentagon? They were so proud. He worked in the national headquarters of our military. He was a janitor. To them, they were his hero. Did you know my pawpaw? He worked in the Pentagon. And she said, I will never in my life forgive myself. The one man who took time to speak to me kindly every morning, and I wish I had stopped and asked him, how are you doing? Do you have a family? I bet they're proud of you. She said, I'll never get to tell John that. And I will grieve the rest of my life that he was so kind to me and I wasn't even a big enough person to be kind back. And I realize now that you never know when the last time you're going to speak to someone is. So be kind. Be thoughtful. Well, I could go on for hours telling you these stories. I'm just telling you that it was some of the most meaningful work in the chaplaincy and the ministry that I ever went through. It was draining, but it was the most fulfilling work that I ever was a part of in the chaplaincy. It reminded me that life is short. You never know what a day holds. Life can turn on a dime. The best we can do is to take today and be kind, be thoughtful, and make this moment count. I'll conclude with these words that I learned my freshman year of college. It was written on a poster on the wall in the student union. And I never wrote it down because I didn't have to. Immediately it was implanted in my mind, and I've taken it kind of as a life motto. If you want to be ready for today, whatever the day brings, or tomorrow, whatever tomorrow brings, knowing that life is uncertain and we shall all someday surely die, how about this for a motto? I am only one, but I am one. I cannot do everything, but I can do something. And by the grace of God, what I can do and should do, I will do. Thank you so much for taking time to hear this morning. And Lori, I hope that was within 20 minutes.
We will now enter into a time of open worship.
Dr. Bob, I've heard you before, or at Laverne Williams' funeral, a couple of others. Over the years, I've grown to respect you tremendously. You're leading the viable community college, sort of the heartbeat of Randolph County, and a big player in the state of North Carolina because of your leadership. And I served a long time on that board, and I was proud of every minute, and I chaired it for a few years, and it was a great pleasure. But I've seen a new level at that place, and I've seen it from way back, okay, since you've been Fred and the other board members. You did a great job. You hired the right person. It used to be a speech, if you want the right person on the bus, you got to put them in the right seat or something like that, Bob.
Sir.
Yeah. I just thank you for what you mean to us and for your great message today.
I like to say, I'm so proud to say that it's been 15 years with college, most of which was Bob was there, and the old joke was the best thing that we ever did all in our 15 years was our college. Doing a great job educating, counseling. It's just unbelievable what the change was when we made where we were at to where we're at today. Bob's a superhuman being. I got to know him well. In a lot of good places together, done a lot of things, and seen a lot of growth and progress. Most of it spurred by Bob's leadership. Thank you for today. I've heard part of those stories, but you've got some other ones about the Iraq War. And I mean, he's a great man. He's done a lot of good for people. That's the key. Keep it up. Thank you.
Amen.
Are all hearts and minds at ease? Dr. Shackleford, will you close us in prayer? After the prayer, we'll sing our hymn number 637, and then you're free to go.
Let us pray. Oh God, our Father, we thank you for this day, this beautiful day of blessings. We realize that you are the great shepherd and we're the sheep of your pasture. Everything we have are gifts from above. You have bestowed upon us richly. We thank you for our freedoms in this country, freedoms that have been paid for with a price, a very high price. Help us not take a single freedom that we have or a single day of life that we have for granted, but to make the most of everything you've given us. We pray on this 20th anniversary of 9/11 that you will continue to be near to and close to the hearts of all those lives who were so personally affected. Thousands and thousands lost loved ones and friends. So many are still traumatized by how the world changed on that day. So Lord, bless us, and as Lori said earlier, may we return to the unity we experienced as a nation after that attack. How far from that we are today. And the things that draw us together are so much more than the things that pull us apart. So help us as brothers and sisters in faith, in citizenship. Help us to find our peace in unity. And help us make the most of each moment and each day, so that when we get to the end of life, and it is appointed unto us once to die and then the judgment, oh God, help us so live that when we stand before you, you will look at us and say, what in the world, not what in the world were you thinking, but you will look at us and say, well done, thou good and faithful servant. Bless us now as we go forth from this congregation. Help us to live our lives in such a way this week that our lives will offer a little candle of light in a world of darkness. We thank you for your love and your grace and all your many blessings. In the name of Christ our Lord. Amen.